Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So I wore this dress because I was watching Never Have I Ever the other day, which is the new Mindy Kaling. I'm not sure if she wrote it or produced it, but I know she had a part in it, and it's the new teen rom-com show on Netflix. Davy, the main character, wore this dress, and I was like, that's my dress! And it played kind of an oddly large role in the story, actually. Then she later referred to it as a dress from Costco, but it's actually from J.Crew, which is bankrupt now. So everything's going well. I am not sleeping well again. If you have followed this vlog for a long time, then you probably have noticed that there are a lot of periods where I just stop sleeping. I've noticed also. So I'm definitely in one of those periods where for some reason I can't sleep and I'm exhausted. My eyeballs hurt all the time. Alone with You in the Ether is coming out in June. So that is my book that's sort of a literary romance. I wouldn't call it a true romance because I don't think it follows any of the conventions of the romance with a capital R genre. However, it is about a romance. That's coming out in June. That's the one that's about two characters with mental disorders, so that is obviously very close to me. It is reflective especially of certain parts of my experience. And then the Which Way anthology is planned for August, so that is, I can't confirm yet what stories are going to be in there. I think it's going to be The Golden Age of Monsters, Stone's Throw, which is a relatively recent one, Saints and Liars, which you've probably, you may have seen the artwork before because that had some really good artwork by Lil Kimura. And then the fourth one, I'm not totally sure about. It might be Pars Fortuna. It might be The Magician's Assistant. It might be the one I just wrote, Love in the Time of Dystopia. It kind of depends. Those are all really different stories, and trying to combine them into an anthology is very, I guess I hadn't realized how many stories I had written for the magazine up to this point. So, yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna, I guess we'll just jump into this because it might take a while. It's a complicated question. Hi, Olivie. I understand if you don't want to answer this question because of the sensitiveness of the subject, but how did you deal with having a strict religious family and distancing yourself from religion? And how did you deal with the initial feelings of guilt? I think I want to know if it gets easier at some point. So the truth is, yes, it does. Becoming independent in general, financially independent, and living somewhere else is going to play a big role in separating yourself from the religious background you were raised in. I don't know how old you are, so I don't know how close or far away you are to this, but I think that definitely the first thing that becomes easier is not being in the actual atmosphere anymore of the sort of strict religion. The way you've asked this question, it seems to me like you already know quite a bit about my background, but some things that maybe I haven't talked about. So I was raised Catholic. My grandmother and my mother are both very devout, but that's definitely not the case for my whole family. My aunt and my godmother, who I'm very, very close to, is deeply atheist. She doesn't even want to be present for prayer and stuff. And I think you can definitely feel how there's tension for her with that. I mean, she has a way different background than I do because she had to go to Catholic school for basically her whole life. And I'm pretty sure the Catholic school in the Philippines is its own deal. She and my mom sometimes like to shout out GMRC, which I guess stands for Good Morals, Right Conduct. They kind of use it as a joke now. It's like a meme for them, and I don't fully understand it, but I kind of get the idea that it's sarcastic and it's kind of cute. Because other than that, they don't have a lot in common. Anyway, in terms of my observance of my own religion, I actually went to church religiously, every Sunday for pretty much my entire life until shortly after college and grad school. So when I met Mr. Blake was when I essentially stopped going to church. Up until that point, I had been singing in church every week, so it's also, for me, was not religious so much as comforting. I mean, one of the things that I like about Catholicism, I've said this before, is that I really like that Mass is pretty much the same anywhere on earth. It is the same anywhere on earth, provided, because every Catholic church is following the same predetermined schedule of what is being read that day. And the only difference is how, what songs are sung and what the priest decides to say during the homily. So for me, there was something comforting about that really didn't have anything to do with the actual religion. In my opinion, and again, all of this is my opinion, religion as a theology is basically our way of answering humanity's questions about the world. Religion as an institution, I mean, it's really an institution of suppression, because religion, it served as a moral code. Before people could really be educated, there was the presence of institutional religion to sort of keep everybody in line. Government itself changes quite a lot in accordance with the way that religion itself evolves. I mean, that says a lot. Just the entire thing and the idea of authority, that might be why you feel very restricted. I mean, there is something very restrictive about religion, and there's something very blind about the way that most people follow their religion. That doesn't mean that you have to follow it blindly. But, asking questions is not really something that religion wants you to do. When you really examine a religion, or even, examine the idea of there being religion and then people going to war over it, it's the antithesis of most religious concepts. How we behave as part of a religion is different often from the religion itself. So one of the best things that I ever learned when I was a teenager, a great thing about Catholicism is that you do learn quite a lot about your religion, which I think worked to my benefit. There's a doctrine in the Catholic Church that I constantly forget the name of, but it's basically that if you really believe something, and you really, really believe it with your entire soul, it's just a conviction that you have, something that you believe is right. We were discussing this in the context of LGBT relationships at the time. And this priest said, if it's something you really believe and you pray about it and you meditate on it and you really ask God, why do I believe this? And you still can't sort of shake the belief. If you've really informed yourself on what it says in the Bible and you've educated yourself and you still believe it, then God put that belief in you for a reason. And I think this is how I have always approached religion from that point on, is if I really believe something and I've really educated myself about it and I have done, sort of the legwork in terms of really understanding something or really trying to understand somebody else's experience, just trying to be compassionate and empathetic. And if I have done the work and I haven't just leapt to a conclusion, I really believe this, crazy things like people deserve to have human rights, people deserve to be in love regardless of their gender. The doctrine that these beliefs are there because God put them there was kind of my first step to maybe distancing myself from things that I was being more blindly taught. To open yourself to the possibility that maybe you don't have an answer is, I think, kind of a big step towards distancing yourself from guilt. I'm getting off track. I think because this is such a sensitive topic, I'm really tiptoeing around it. What I think is very interesting about religion is a lot of religions originate from the same time period. If we're just looking at sort of the history of religion, which I've been doing a lot about because there is some older mythologies and theologies are important to the sequel of the Atlas Six. And so I've been doing a lot of research about the oldest gods, the oldest mythologies. And they all have a lot of things in common. Almost all religions have a flood story. Almost all religions have sort of what begins as a very vengeful god or gods, where the idea is the earth is a lawless place, and these gods are the dominant ones. They're very powerful, they're the smartest, and they kind of corral humanity into order. And then after that, you get usually a new generation of gods who kind of rebel against the idea of just order, and then it becomes more about living. Then you find a little bit more about acceptance. That's when mythology starts to be more about there's gods of art and culture, and you can see the way religion evolves as humanity itself is evolving throughout history. I mean, yes, faith is believing something without proof. And in this life, we will never have proof of our beliefs when it comes to, the universe. I mean, even For some people, science is a religion. That's the thing that they look to. It's Albert Einstein who said it, that religion without science is blind and science without religion is lame. So kind of this idea that not just religion, God, but religion, the idea that there are things that we can't possibly understand, that there are things that will always be mysteries. There are some things that we can figure out, yes, and some things that are just too big for us to know. We're just these tiny little beings on an enormous planet that's itself in an enormous universe, and who knows what's beyond this? Who knows what our actual role is? And there's some things that I do struggle to believe in, like I struggle with karma, because I think that not a lot of people get what they deserve. I mean, certainly not what we have made of karma, which is sort of like an almost instantaneous thing. That's like you will see the results of your outcome, like the results of what you put into the world will come back to you in really a short time frame, which isn't the original concept of karma. But that concept, I don't think it works, because I think there are too many people in the world who don't get what they deserve. I don't believe in a vengeful God. I believe that if there were some sort of creator God who is able to interfere, that surely this would not be what they want. I don't see it. I don't know how. There's so many people who should just be, if there's a God who can just smite us right and left, then where are they? The Bible is not like an autobiography by God. It's stories written down. Certainly the New Testament is just stories written down by 4 dudes who weren't actually there. They wrote down what they heard at the time. And so, though I think, obviously, that there are such important morals that most people overlook, like especially now, it's crazy. It's crazy to me that the far right can even claim that they have anything to do with religion. It's just so distant from what is actually in the Bible that I don't even know how they can claim this. I don't know how the Republican Party can even pretend that they're still wholesome. Jesus was not down with the moneylenders, so Jesus is basically an illegal immigrant who was friends with prostitutes. I find it, I don't even know if they're prostitutes, because that could be a mistranslation. I've read so many different accounts. It's unclear why all of us have based so much of our lives in this book that was written by 4 dudes who weren't there. That's just kind of my whole long thing about religion, and especially something I think is interesting because of what I have been researching for this, and just kind of understanding, if you treat all religion as mythology, that doesn't take the soul away from it. Mythology is a reflection of us, of humanity, of our experience, and so I don't think that belittles it. Hopefully you agree. Anyway, in terms of actually distancing yourself, you physically distance yourself. As for the guilt, I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty at all. I think initially I felt bad because my mom would say, go to church. But I never really went because she made me. I went because it was comforting, because I liked singing, I liked the songs, I liked the way I feel when I'm in church. And there are times when I sort of want to be back there, not in a community sort of way, just to sit quietly and listen to stories that are familiar to me, and to gain comfort from that. What I actually believe is so far beyond Catholicism at this point. I mean, listen to everything I just said. This is not anywhere the Vatican would not approve, but I'm comfortable with those beliefs. I think I've gotten to a point where I've done enough thinking about it on my own. I've read the Bible. I've read other religious texts. There are concepts from many religions that I think are beautiful. Mr. Blake is very, he's got a very Buddhist school of thought. And I think also if you treat religion as philosophy, you can find the things that you believe in, and that can give you some sort of comfort. And yes, some people might call that cherry picking or whatever, but it is. I mean, each religion is rooted in some place. It's rooted in the society that created that religion. I have this little conspiracy theory. Jesus was like, he wandered the desert for a long time, and no one says anything about what he was doing at like a large portion of his life. Like decades of his life are just missing. So I kind of like the idea that maybe he just traveled around and actually met someone from a different culture and was like, these are great ideas. And this is what happened. So basically, you're going to inform yourself and decide what you really do believe. As for whether you feel guilt about it, I mean, that's on you. I like to think that this all comes back to this idea of your conscience is, as long as it is informed, you believe what you believe for a reason. And that might be difficult for your family. There might be aspects of your religion. I mean, obviously, I know that there are a lot of stricter religions than Catholicism. And there might be things that your family can never come to terms with. And I don't necessarily know what to do about that. I mean, I think my natural instinct is just to say, if something is toxic in your life, get rid of it. But if it's not something that you can actually be rid of, then I think you have to come to terms with it in your own way. You got to do your own wandering the desert for 40 days. and whatever your version of that is, and coming out on the other side with the acceptance that what you believe is worth believing, that your convictions are there for a reason, that you can do the most good in your life believing in whatever you believe. And you have the answers that you're comfortable with. And I think coming up with those questions is sometimes the hard part. The what do I believe question is like a big one. I think it's taken me a long time to sort of arrive at this idea that I don't really know. And that's okay. And I'm okay with that. If it does turn out to be a vengeful God and there is St. Peter after I die and he was like, you didn't do what your mom told you to do. I mean, okay, well, I lived the best that I could and I tried to help the most people that I could. And I believed what made the most sense to me. And hopefully St. Peter is cool with that. Like, I don't know. I feel comfortable with the idea that St. Peter will be okay with that. That God will be okay with that. Or that if there isn't a God and this is my life and this is it, and when I'm gone, I'm okay with that. I will not have wasted a moment of my time. So this is not what you asked at all. It's just hard not to, I think that, guilt is a residual thing that you will suffer from if you continue to put yourself through suffering. And a lot of this will be self-exploration. And some of this might require a therapist later in life. I don't know. Or if you want to go back to speak to someone in your religion who you trust. I think that there are lots of religious people who have different viewpoints, who, people who have actually studied their religion, who feel like they can give you answers. I got answers I needed from a priest. But I think the independence of your mind, asking questions on your own, being able to answer them for yourself, will always help you come to terms with points of difficulty. Like when you don't believe something that your parents believe. Knowing why and being confident in that and being secure in that and knowing that your beliefs are enough, that will really change your ability to interact with other people. I mean, my mom says, she says God-related things to me all the time that I don't necessarily agree with or believe. My grandma was like that as well. But it's easy for me to say, like, I know that gives them comfort. And so I don't need to challenge their beliefs. That's not important to me. I don't need to change their minds. I'm okay with what I believe. And if that means that I have to be quiet and just accept that my mom is trying to love me the way that she knows how to love, which is by asking for God's blessing for me, all that says is that she cares about me. And I don't have to believe exactly what she says. I don't have to go along with it because she's my mother and this is what she wants for me. And hopefully you can get to that point as well once you feel like you are being true to yourself. That was so much. This is just such a heavy topic. There's so much there. But anyway, I'm really, okay, the Captain MacGyver's, like, it's such a big file, and I'm still working with it, but hopefully it comes out soon. Princess's Guide will probably update this week. That's my plan. And then, yeah, and then maybe I'll tell you more stuff soon. We'll see. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.